You ever notice how the guy who doesn't chase, doesn't explain, and doesn't beg for love always ends up being the one they want the most? You're doing everything right, texting first, showing up, being available, and still, she pulls away. She gets colder. You get more anxious. You ask yourself what changed. The truth? Nothing changed. She just saw you wanted her more than yourself. In a world where men are told to be open, to express every emotion, to prove they care, the ones who don't are the ones women dream about, bosses respect, and people follow. They aren't cold, they're controlled. They know this one truth: the less you need anyone, the more powerful you become. If this speaks to you, comment, "I will never beg again" right now, and listen carefully. Because if you don't learn how to detach, not just from women, but from the need to be liked, approved, and accepted, you will always be at the mercy of people who don't care about your peace. Number 1. Neediness kills respect. You wake up, and the first thing you check is whether she replied. You go to bed replaying the last thing you said, wondering if you came off too eager, too soft, too needy. You're calculating her silence like it's a math problem you just can't solve. You send that "good morning" text, hoping she'll match the energy you wish you didn't need. But every time she pulls back, you push harder. You're giving her priority in a life where you've barely even prioritized yourself. You're investing in someone who hasn't invested in you. You abandon your workout, your business idea, your peace to be available, as if showing up more will finally make her see your worth. You try to fix what isn't broken on your end, but deep down, you know something's off. Her respect is fading. Her tone gets shorter. Her replies get colder. You used to be the man with purpose, with plans, with drive. But now, you're orbiting her like she's the sun, and you wonder why she doesn't look at you the same. It's not because you're unworthy. It's because you've turned your emotional hunger into dependence. You've made her your emotional center, and that's why you've become invisible. You've traded self-respect for access. You believe vulnerability will save the connection, but what you don't see is that your fear of losing her already killed it. Respect is not built on effort. It's built on value. And when a man gives up everything for someone who hasn't earned his sacrifices, he becomes disposable. You think loyalty means doing more. She sees it as submission, because in her eyes, the man who fears losing her is a man already defeated. The more you chase, the more she runs. The more you open up without boundaries, the more she closes off. She senses your anxiety, your obsession, your constant need to be validated, and it makes her feel like she has too much power, and that imbalance suffocates attraction. Women don't fall for effort. They fall for presence, for purpose, for a man who moves like his time matters, who acts like he's the prize, not because he says it, but because his life proves it. You were never supposed to make her your mission. You were supposed to have a mission so solid that she'd fight for a space in your world. Instead, you let her energy direct your value. You made her silence louder than your own inner voice. But it's not too late to reverse this. You start by reclaiming your mornings. Before you think of anyone else, you go move. You train. You read. You create. You do the hard things. You build that body you've been putting off. You start the side hustle. You double down on your routines. And when you stop obsessing over texts and start obsessing over excellence, everything changes. You become less available. Not because you're playing games, but because you're busy becoming a man she can't ignore. The man who doesn't ask, "Why isn't she texting back?" He asks, "Did I do what I said I would today?" When she starts to feel your absence, not your presence, you'll see the shift. But by then you won't need it, because you've become full again, complete, independent, powerful. The type of man women chase but can't control. The kind of man people respect without needing to be loud. And here's the truth you must tattoo on your soul. Attention given too easily becomes invisible. and effort not reciprocated becomes weakness. You stop this cycle by drawing the line. No more begging for breadcrumbs. No more rearranging your life for maybe. No more sacrificing your potential for her comfort. Because when you finally choose yourself, the world takes notice. And that woman you thought you needed, she either levels up or gets left behind. Neediness doesn't just kill relationships, it murders your identity. But detachment resurrects your power. And if you've ever wondered how to stop losing yourself in relationships, how to rebuild that inner strength when you've given too much, how to finally become the man who's respected, chosen, and never again overlooked, then the Stoic relationship blueprint was made for you. It's your manual to emotional sovereignty, to unshakable confidence, to building a frame so solid no one can pull you out of character again. You've asked yourself, why do I always care more? Why do I feel so powerless when she pulls away? Why can't I stop overthinking? The answers are inside this blueprint, and once you own it, it's yours forever. No expiration, no subscription, just timeless, bulletproof knowledge that will be in your hands anytime life tries to shake your frame again. The link's in the comments. If you're serious about never being the same man again, get it now and start the transformation that should have started years ago. Number 2. Mystery breeds obsession. You keep thinking if she just understood how much you care, she'd finally love you right. So you pour everything out, your intentions, your dreams, your feelings, on the first few dates like it's a race to be emotionally naked before she even shows up fully clothed. You want to be different, so you try harder, open up more, tell her everything, thinking vulnerability is the secret weapon that'll separate you from the rest. But what you're really doing is stripping away every layer of mystery that once made you intriguing. And then you wonder why she starts fading. You notice her energy shift, her enthusiasm dip. Her messages become colder. She's not ghosting you. She's losing the curiosity that kept her drawn to you in the first place. Because there's nothing left to discover. You already gave her the full map before she even asked to play the game. You told her what you're scared of. You told her what you're looking for. You told her how you've been hurt. You told her what makes you tick. And now, there's nothing left to wonder. Mystery is not manipulation. It's the oxygen of attraction. When a woman can't fully read you, she keeps paying attention. When she doesn't know what you're thinking, she fills in the blanks. But when every card is laid out on the table, there's no game to play, no fire to stoke, no chase to engage in. You didn't create safety, you killed tension. And the tragic part is you think you were just being honest. What you don't realize is that desire dies when predictability reigns. The mind doesn't obsess over what it understands. It obsesses over what it almost understands. The man who is quiet, measured, selective with what he shares, who doesn't rush to prove himself, who listens more than he speaks. That man lingers in her mind long after the conversation ends. Not because he did something extravagant, but because he gave her just enough to ignite her thoughts, not enough to satisfy them. And you think, but I don't want to play games. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. Relationships are games. So is life. And the only difference between winners and losers is knowing which games are worth playing. You don't show your whole hand in poker, and you don't reveal your entire soul to someone who hasn't even earned your attention yet. When a man becomes fully readable, he becomes forgettable. Think about the people you've obsessed over. Wasn't part of the reason because they left you hanging, confused, curious. Their unpredictability made them unforgettable. And yet, you throw that advantage away in the name of transparency. She asks what you're thinking, and you tell her every detail. She asks where it's going, and you spill your fears. You think it makes you real. But in her subconscious, it makes you easy. And anything easy is eventually discarded. This applies beyond women. The boss who sees you overly eager, senses your desperation. The friend who always knows what you're thinking stops being curious. The audience that sees you explain every move gets bored. You become wallpaper, white noise. And then you try harder, hoping more exposure equals more engagement. But it just pushes people further. You think being mysterious is about saying nothing. It's not. It's about saying just enough to create thought, just enough to leave questions, just enough to raise curiosity. She asks how your day went. You don't need a detailed play-by-play. You give her a slice, not the whole pie. You drop a powerful statement, not a full monologue. You learn to master subtlety, restraint, presence. You don't avoid emotion, you control access to it. And when she pushes to know more, you choose when to reward that effort. That's the game. That's the seduction. That's what creates depth. Mystery is not aloofness. It's intentional ambiguity. It's silence that invites imagination. It's a look that raises questions. It's a pause that makes them wonder. And the men who master it, they become unforgettable because they never make the mistake of being emotionally cheap. They never allow themselves to be completely known by someone who hasn't earned the right to know them. They move with privacy, speak with intent, and share like their soul is not for public consumption. And what happens when you do this? She starts thinking, obsessing, replaying conversations, trying to decode meanings, wondering where you stand. You're not withholding, you're magnetizing, you're not controlling, you're commanding, you're not cold, you're precise. And in every space you leave open, she invests more. That's how obsession is born. That's how desire deepens. That's how you stay etched into her thoughts when you're not around. But more importantly, that's how you protect your energy. You become a man who moves in silence, not because you're afraid to be seen, but because not everyone deserves a front row seat to your life. That's the foundation of power, not needing to be understood to be effective. You don't need her to get you in the first week. You don't need your co-workers to know your next move. You don't need your friends to hear every fear. You need to know your value, guard your story, and reveal your world in doses earned by consistency, loyalty, and respect. And if she calls you distant, elusive, hard to read, good. You finally become a man she can't control. And that man, that's the one she thinks about when she lies in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what makes you tick. That's the man she wants to chase. Not because he's playing games, but because he's not playing at all. He's just living with purpose, protecting his essence, and letting curiosity do the rest. Number 3. Reactions reveal weakness. You feel the tension rising in your chest when she leaves your message on read. Your stomach tightens when she says she's busy again after canceling last minute. Your mind starts racing when she starts acting different, colder, more distant, and without even realizing it, your entire nervous system is hooked on her behavior like a junkie needing his next fix. And that's exactly where you lose the game, because you don't understand that every time you react, you hand over power you can't afford to give. You let someone else decide your emotional state, your self-worth, your next move, and from that moment on, you are no longer in control of your own life. You are reacting to hers, and she can feel it even if you don't say a word, because your energy shifts, your tone changes, your pace speeds up, your confidence cracks, and she realizes she can steer your emotions with subtle changes, with a few words, with silence, and she starts to test you, not to be evil, but to see if you're rooted in something deeper than her approval. And when you fail the test, when you lash out, when you beg for reassurance, when you try to fix something, she broke. She sees you're emotionally soft. She sees you can't handle pressure. She sees that behind the nice guy exterior is a man who cannot lead himself without her validation, and attraction withers because no woman wants to follow a man who crumbles at emotional resistance. And yet this is exactly what modern men do. They over-explain, over-justify, over-apologize for things they didn't even do wrong. And the more they try to be good communicators, the more they expose their weakness by reacting to every shift in tone, every text delay, every passive-aggressive jab. And the worst part is they think they're fixing the relationship, when in reality, they're just training her to lose respect for them by proving they have no backbone, no center, no self-control. And here's where the truth hits hard. Emotional reactivity is not emotional intelligence. It's emotional slavery. And you only gain freedom when you learn how to pause, when you choose not to defend every accusation, not to explain every choice, not to entertain every provocation. When you realize your silence carries more weight than your words when used right, and instead of reacting to her moods, you respond to your own principles. You move from your frame, not hers, because the man who can stay composed under pressure is the man who gets chosen when it matters most. Not because he manipulates, but because he's rare. And in a world of emotionally erratic men trying to win women over through endless dialogue, he stands out by not needing to convince anyone of anything, and this doesn't mean being cold or stoic for performance. It means you have such strong internal leadership that nothing outside of you breaks your state. Not a woman's silence, not her games, not her indecision, not her inconsistencies. And the way you get there is by retraining your impulses, by building the muscle of stillness through practice, through breath, through making space between stimulus and response, and by setting boundaries that don't require explanation, because not every disrespect deserves your voice. Some only deserve distance, and you must stop handing out your emotional blueprint to people who use it to control you. You must stop making your emotions public property and start guarding them like treasure, because if every button she pushes gives her a result, she'll keep pressing them. Not because she hates you, but because she knows she can. And the moment you stop reacting, you become a mystery. A man who cannot be steered by guilt, by shame, by emotional chaos. And that's when she starts to lean in, because you're no longer predictable. You're no longer accessible through emotional traps. You're now operating on principle, not emotion. And the irony is this: the less you explain, the more power your words carry. The less you react, the more authority you gain. And if you want to be the man women respect, the man people follow, the man who moves without seeking permission, you must master this. Because in every relationship, in every negotiation, in every confrontation, the person who can remain calm holds the advantage, and the person who shows their wound first gets cut deeper. So ask yourself, how many times have you taught someone how to hurt you just by reacting to them? How many times have you validated manipulation by giving it energy? How many times have you weakened your own image just by being too eager to explain your side? And how much longer will you keep doing it, knowing it never works? The solution is not to be heartless, but to be grounded. The solution is to respond with purpose, not impulse. The solution is to build a life so anchored that not even her silence can shake your peace. And you start by slowing down, by not rushing to fill every silence, by letting her sit in her choices, by not interrupting her tests with premature explanations, by letting space teach the lesson your words never could. And the man who learns this doesn't just win in dating, he wins in life, because he no longer makes fear-based decisions. He no longer plays defense. He no longer runs emotional marathons hoping someone will meet him halfway. He stops reacting and starts choosing. He stops chasing and starts attracting. And above all, he stops asking for respect and starts commanding it. Not with volume, but with restraint. Not with force, but with clarity. Not with emotion, but with conviction. And that's what makes him unstoppable, because people know they can't shake him, can't guilt him, can't bait him, can't move him unless he wants to be moved. And that kind of man doesn't ask for power, he walks in it. Number 4, access must be earned. You keep giving your time away like it's nothing. showing up when she calls, canceling your plans when she needs to talk, answering texts at 1 a.m., even though she ignores you all day, making her feel like she's the center of your world before she's even proven she deserves to orbit yours. And you think that's what love is: sacrifice, availability, attention on demand. But what you're actually doing is teaching her that you have no boundaries, no standards, no requirements for access. And that's why she starts taking you for granted. Not because she's heartless, but because you made her comfort a higher priority than your self-respect. And that's when the shift happens, when she starts assuming your time is always available, when your calls mean less, when your presence becomes an expectation, not a privilege, and suddenly you're no longer the man she admired, but the man she manages, the man she knows will show up no matter how little she gives. And what you need to realize is this: women don't value what's handed to them too easily. They value what they have to qualify for, what they have to rise up to meet, what they have to earn through consistency. And when you make yourself accessible to someone who hasn't invested in you, you violate the law of value, because anything abundant loses worth. And you do it thinking it'll win her over, thinking that being the always there guy will separate you from the rest. But it just lumps you in with every man who thinks affection equals attention, who thinks love is proved through 24/7 availability. And the truth is, it's the man who makes access conditional who commands respect, not because he's manipulative, but because his time has weight, his energy is focused, his space is not open to everyone, and you must begin to move the same way. You must start treating your presence like the asset it is, not because you want to play games, but because you are the game. And not everyone deserves a front row seat to your grind, your dreams, your body, your mind, and definitely not your emotions. And this applies across your whole life. At work, you need to stop saying yes to everything just to be liked, because every time you do, you show you don't value your own capacity, and they will keep piling things on your plate until you break, because you never said, "This far, no further." In friendships, you need to stop entertaining people who only reach out when they need something, who ghost when you're struggling, but expect you to be their therapist at 2 a.m. Because if your phone is always open to the unworthy, your peace will always be disturbed by the undeserving. And in dating, you need to stop trying to prove yourself in the early stages by doing the most. You are not here to audition for the role of boyfriend. You are here to live in purpose, and whoever wants to be part of your world better bring something to the table besides looks and drama. Because if all she has is beauty and problems, and you give her full access to your time, your thoughts, your routines, then you are training her to believe that effort is optional and presence is guaranteed. And women don't trust men who are always available, because if you're always available, you're either too idle or too desperate. And either way, you lose the edge, and you lose it because you don't understand this one truth. Real value doesn't chase, it evaluates. And real power doesn't beg, it sets the terms. And the more you invest in people who haven't qualified, the more resentful and exhausted you become, wondering why no one matches your energy. But how can they match what you give away for free? You want loyalty, but you make yourself accessible to the disloyal. You want respect, but you give your secrets to the disrespectful. You want peace, but you let chaos call you whenever it wants. And until you change that, nothing else will change. Until you start demanding qualifications for access to your life, you will keep attracting the unqualified. So write this down. Just because someone wants access to you doesn't mean they're entitled to it. Just because someone is used to you being available doesn't mean you have to stay that way. And just because you love someone doesn't mean you give them unrestricted entry into your focus, your plans, your mission, your emotions. Access is a privilege, not a human right. And the more you treat it like a privilege, the more people rise up to meet it. Because when a man moves with boundaries, people learn quickly, either rise or get out of the way, and she may get mad when you pull your time back. She may call you cold, selfish, distant, but it's not your job to prove her wrong. It's her job to prove she deserves your energy. And when you start living this way, you'll lose a lot of people who were only around because of what you gave. But what you'll gain is your power back, your clarity back, your time back. And eventually, you'll attract people who respect your standards, who rise to your frequency, who understand that you're not for everyone. And that's what makes you unforgettable, not because you're always there, but because being with you actually means something. Number 5. Stillness signals power. You talk too much when you're nervous. You explain too much when you feel misunderstood. You try to be extra nice when she pulls away. You repeat yourself hoping to be taken seriously. And what you don't realize is every time you fill the silence, every time you rush to speak, to defend, to justify, to fix the vibe, to prove you're a good man, you show her your hand and you lose leverage, because what most men haven't been taught is this: movement without purpose is weakness, talking without power is noise, and emotional leakage is currency lost. And so the moment she shifts her energy, you panic, not out loud, but in your chest, in your behavior, in the way you start typing long paragraphs, in the way you try to cheer her up when she's cold, in the way you explain your intentions hoping it softens her silence, and she senses it, not consciously at first, but energetically, biologically, viscerally, and you go from being the grounded man she felt something for to the uncertain man she needs to manage, to mother, to calm. And that's when the attraction begins to die, because she no longer feels you as a source of masculine direction. She feels you as another emotional responsibility, another child she must emotionally babysit. And the tragedy is, you're doing this to show care, to prove you're emotionally open, to be different from the men who were distant with her before. But you're not being different. You're just being reactive in a different way. And the truth is, nothing kills presence like emotional overexposure, and nothing commands respect like controlled stillness. Not performative, not robotic, but practiced, real, earned. And if you study the men who are truly respected, not just admired online, but respected in the room, you'll notice they speak only when needed. They move slowly, deliberately, without the need to convince anyone of anything. They are not rattled by opinions, they are not moved by emotional games, and their power doesn't scream. It resonates, it lingers, and the most dangerous thing about them isn't how loud they are. It's how little they need to be loud, because they've mastered the art of being still under pressure, of being silent when accused, of being focused when insulted, of being calm when everything around them is chaotic. And this isn't something you fake, it's something you build. And most men have never built it, because they've been trained to react to every emotion, every feminine storm, every comment, every stare, every delay. And you've been trained to think that if you're not constantly doing something, saying something, performing something, then you'll lose her, lose the opportunity, lose control. But in truth, the moment you lose your stillness is the moment you lose the game. Because now you're no longer centered, you're no longer leading. You're chasing balance externally instead of creating it internally. And the way out of this isn't about pretending to be still. It's about actually becoming it, about training your emotional reflexes to slow down, to hold, to breathe, to think before speaking, before reacting, and especially before investing. And you build this by putting yourself in situations that require discomfort without reward. Cold showers, hard workouts, delayed gratification. Learning to sit with your own mind for hours, with no distraction, no scrolling, just facing yourself, building internal order. And once you begin mastering that, you take it into your life. The next time she tries to provoke a reaction, you pause. The next time she pulls away, you wait instead of chasing. The next time someone challenges your decision, you don't explain. You stand firm, and you watch as the dynamic shifts, because stillness doesn't just signal power. It creates it, because the man who doesn't flinch, doesn't beg, doesn't panic, is the man who can't be played. And every time you respond from stillness instead of impulse, you rewire your identity. You become someone different, someone she thinks about more, someone people listen to more, someone who makes other men nervous without even raising his voice. And that stillness becomes your armor, not to protect you from connection, but to protect your peace, to preserve your energy, to enforce your boundaries without saying a word, and you'll start noticing things. How people pause before interrupting you, how she rethinks how she speaks to you, how your boss speaks with more respect, how your presence holds space. Because stillness isn't inactivity, it's power restrained, it's wisdom in motion, it's the essence of command. And as you deepen into this, you no longer chase attraction. You attract without movement. You no longer chase peace. You become peace. And when people say, there's something about him, they're not talking about your looks or your words. They're talking about your unshakable presence, the feeling that you can't be moved unless you decide to move. And that kind of man, rare as he is the one women dream about. Enemies fear, allies respect, and the world follows. Not because he demands it, but because his stillness makes it inevitable. Number 6. Freedom is magnetic. You don't realize it yet, but the very thing you keep giving away so carelessly, your need to be chosen, your fear of being alone, your obsession with securing her, is the exact thing making you invisible, making you small, making you forgettable. Because you've been told that showing her how much you need her is romantic, that opening your entire world to her up front is the path to loyalty, that bending for love makes you a good man. But what actually happens is every time you place your worth in her hands, you lose control of your own value. Every time you cling, over-text, overthink, try to talk her into staying, try to prove you're enough, you communicate one message louder than anything else. I don't feel whole without you, and that energy is repulsive, not because women are cruel, but because nature doesn't reward desperation. It respects sovereignty, and that's what you've lost by giving away your freedom to anyone who offers attention in return. You've let your emotional state become dependent on her behavior, her approval, her mood swings, and now she knows it, she feels it, and it changes everything. Because the more available you are emotionally, physically, digitally, the more permission you give her to take you for granted, to test your patience, to pull away and watch you chase. Because she knows you won't leave, you've made it clear that your peace is negotiable, your time is open, your value is conditional on her choosing you. And what happens is that instead of earning her devotion, you provoke her detachment, not because she's unkind, but because women instinctively withdraw from men who hand over all power. And that's why everything changes when you flip the script and stop proving you're worthy of being chosen, and start living like someone who doesn't wait to be picked, someone who picks himself daily, someone who can walk away from any situation that disrespects his standards, his time, his energy. Because the truth is, the man who can walk away is the most attractive, the most dangerous, the most remembered. Because he communicates through action, not threats, not passive aggression, not guilt, but real, calm, powerful detachment that says, I choose peace over drama, discipline over begging, standards over chaos. And that kind of energy pulls people in, not because you're trying, but because you're rare. And in a world full of men who would rather beg than rebuild, who would rather stay than grow, who would rather lose themselves than lose her, you stand out without saying a word, because your freedom becomes magnetic, not loud, not arrogant, but undeniable. Because now you move like a man who doesn't need attention to feel powerful, doesn't need sex to feel validated, doesn't need texts to feel seen. And this doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you stop depending. You stop attaching your self-worth to the reactions of someone who's never been responsible for your growth. You stop building your identity around romantic acceptance and start anchoring it in purpose, in principle, in practice. And as you do, the anxiety leaves your body, the confusion leaves your mind, the obsession stops living in your chest, because you finally understand that the man who needs nothing can offer everything. And that's when life starts to shift. She starts texting more, wondering what's changed. She starts feeling your absence like a vacuum she can't ignore, and your presence becomes a gift again, not an expectation, because you're no longer giving yourself away. You're allowing yourself to be earned. And the irony is, the less you chase, the more you attract, the less you explain, the more she listens, the less you cling, the more she wants to hold on, because she senses the change in your energy, the change in your eyes, the change in your focus. She feels it when you no longer break character to keep her comfortable, when you no longer trade your peace for attention, and she realizes that you've become something rare. A man with options, not because you have a harem of women, but because you have standards, because you have peace without anyone, because you have a mission and you're too locked in to entertain disrespect. And that's what makes you magnetic. Not the money, not the looks, but the ability to say no, the ability to let go, the ability to live without begging to be understood. And you build that ability by making a choice right now, to stop waiting for anyone to validate you, to stop negotiating your value, to stop justifying your boundaries, and instead rebuild your life from the inside out, piece by piece, brick by brick, until you look in the mirror and finally see someone you'd never leave again, someone you'd fight for, someone you'd protect. And when you become that man, freedom isn't just magnetic, it's inevitable. Because now you walk like someone who's willing to lose anything but himself. And that kind of man is not only unforgettable, he's unstoppable. If you're tired of being the man who gives everything and gets nothing, if you're done being the one who's always chasing, explaining, waiting for love, for clarity, for respect, then it's time to reclaim what you lost. The Stoic relationship blueprint isn't just a book. It's the truth no one gave you when you needed it most. It's the unfiltered clarity that'll snap you out of emotional slavery and rebuild you into the man who doesn't beg for worth. He commands it. If you're ready to stop being the man she tolerates and start being the one she fears losing, comment, "My power is mine," below. Like this video, subscribe so more men can finally hear what you just heard, and hit the link in the comments to grab your copy now. This knowledge will stay with you forever. No matter who stays or leaves, you'll never lose yourself again.